Hi, guys. I'm Jeff. I'm an Agile coach. I work with Capital One in Toronto, and I was asked if I would put a panel together. So as you may have noticed, as some speakers have alluded to earlier, I did what all good speakers do. And about an hour ago, I went and found some people and said, hey, would you like to be on a panel? And you may think that's a lie, but it's unfortunately closer to the truth than I'd like to admit. But we have six fantastic people here who have agreed to join us today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves a little bit, just to let you know, and you may have heard them in some of their talks earlier today. But our purpose here this afternoon, in this last little bit of time, is to talk about some of the things we've seen in organizations as we've been coaching and consulting in a variety of organizations. As you look at this panel here, collectively we've worked in large organizations, we've worked in government, we've worked in enterprise, big enterprise. We've also worked in small mid-market type companies. We've worked in small organizations, and we've worked with startups. So pretty much everything is covered somewhere in this group of amazing people. And we've noticed some things that are common across these different organizations. But this is a chance for us, and I have questions prepared that they haven't seen yet. But really, this is a chance for us to engage. And so, as we're going, I'd like to ask you if you have any questions. If you could hold any questions until you have one, that would be great. And if you have one, we'll certainly involve yours, because that's what we're here to do: is to answer your questions about what we've seen in organizations and what we've done about it. So in many cases, we see good things, and what have we done to amplify those great things that we've seen? How can we build on those? And how can we take things that are going well and let others in the organization, in different departments, different divisions, on different teams, know about it, so that we can actually amplify what we've seen? We've also seen opportunities, things that perhaps aren't so good, and how can we lessen those? And what are some things that we've done in our experience, collective experience, in that space? So I'm going to pass the microphone along. We'll start with Ardita, and just do a 30-second introduction. If you can maybe do it in one sentence or less. Good?
Okay. I wasn't prepared for that. Okay, my name is Ardita Karai. I come from Toronto. Agile coach, focus on continuous delivery, but looking from the product management side of things.
My name is Dana Scheider. I'm a software developer on the Ruby agent team at New Relic, and I'm also a core contributor to Cucumber.
My name is David Alpert. I have used Cucumber, and I've worked primarily as a developer and a technical coach. I've facilitated code retreats. I've worked as an architect, as a dev manager, a bunch of different roles.
I'm Emily Tate. I am a product manager, product management consultant with Pivotal Labs from Dallas, Texas, and I have eaten cucumbers. Does that count?
I'm Adam Muret. I'm an independent management consultant working in large enterprises, and I grew some phenomenal lemon cucumbers this year.
I did not. My name is Chris. I am an independent Agile coach based in Toronto, now shifting my focus more towards management. Consulting and helping leaders change their organizations. So my main focus.
Excellent, guys. Thank you. A couple of things that I'm just going to add on to their introductions here that might be interesting to know is that Chris is also an avid craft brewer, brewing his own beer.
Yep.
He does that and applies a lot of agile principles and lean thinking actually to his brewing. Adam is a sailor, loves to sail. I don't know how many agile principles you apply there, but he's also an aspiring chef. And if you follow him on Twitter, you will get very hungry as he posts great-looking food. And perhaps the other interesting thing I learned as I was looking this up, Dana, is that you're a mezzo-soprano. And I wasn't totally clear where mezzo-soprano was. So to clarify it for everybody, that's between a soprano and a contralto. I learned that. So just a couple of little tidbits of information. That's exactly why I did that. Ardita asked, what is a contralto? And that's exactly why I tried to clarify it that way. All right. So maybe we can start. And again, please, guys, if you have any questions for you've got a wealth of knowledge up here. I'd encourage you to make use of it. But I'd love to start perhaps If we can start, David, maybe we'll start with you, if that's okay, because I picked you first. But maybe you can tell us, in your career, in the coach retreats you've done, in the organizations that you've worked with, in helping with creating great environments, what would be the thing that you're most proud of?
So these are unrehearsed questions. First time I'm hearing this. I think the thing that I'm most proud of is, I would say, building an environment in which people could come together and feel like a sense of team was developing. That's something that is really important to me, and something that has really motivated my own career and my own work, is trying to look for ways to make better environments, not just for myself selfishly, but also for, I look at the things that I have not enjoyed and the things that I've struggled with as a developer coming up through the course of my career, and I've really looked to create spaces wherever I could, in large and small ways, where people, like working conditions, could be better for people working in software development. And so
That's great. I'm going to go push one step further. Can you give me an example of something that you've done with a team to help create those environments? And yes, by the way, these questions, I didn't let them see any of these questions ahead of time. I thought that would provide a little bit more of a truthful, on-the-spot type of answer. So these are totally unrehearsed on purpose.
Thank you.
And the rest of you aren't
I
off
feel a
the
little
hook.
bit like a job interview.
You're next.
So one thing that I have done that worked really well is that I found myself working in an environment where the priorities were constantly shifting, and the development team and the delivery team was getting blamed a lot for inability to deliver. And when I got there and I started working with the team, I realized that the team actually was quite good at what they were doing, but they were working in a very difficult environment where it was hard to be it was hard to get to end of job when the priorities kept shifting, right? So that was one thing. So something that I did that made an impact there was I worked to provide a sense of like a filter and a buffer between the various requests that were coming into the team and the requests that were being provided to the team, and the direction that was being provided to the team. So that buffer allowed a little bit more stability for the team, enough stability that they were allowed to get to the end of some work. And that made a positive impact on the environment.
Cool. Emily, you've got, I'm going to ask you the same question, what are you most proud of? But you've got a different take on it, because we've just heard it from a developer's perspective, working on the team. From a product manager and a product management side of things, what are you most proud of?
So I think there's kind of two aspects of it. First, I'll say I think one of my proudest moments as a product manager was when when we really started working with our development team side by side and realizing that we were one team rather than in the organization I had been in, there was this concept of the business is the customer of technology. And I think that's one of the most toxic lines that can be said in an organization, because it starts to make this us versus them mentality. And it starts to imply that the business or product management shouldn't care about what is going on under the hood. But at the end of the day, if I want to be the most effective in my job, I need to be able to understand the technology, understand what's going on behind the scenes, and work with my development team and my engineers to make sure, first of all, that I'm not making decisions that make their lives harder, because we as product managers have a tendency to do that and utter the words, well, it's easy, right? Or it's just this one little thing. Letting me in and understanding that technology helps me make better decisions. And then it really lets my engineering team contribute to the product more. I know that there have been several times that I came in and had a feature, and my designer and I had figured out exactly what we wanted, and we gave it to the engineering team, and they started coding on stories, and then I'd get pulled over and say, hey, I know you said you thought you wanted this, but I actually think if we did this, it would be much better. And it was things that I hadn't thought of because I wasn't looking at it from the perspective of an engineer. And features and things, were better and done more simply and quicker because of building that team together. So I'd say kind of the manifestation of that, though, was when like I actually came and sat in the middle of our development team and they didn't kick me out. So a very long answer to what my favorite moment was.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. Let's maybe just switch it up a little bit here because it's fun to talk about some successes. Why don't you pass the microphone there to Adam, and we'll let Adam tell us perhaps in his career as he's been consulting with multiple organizations as an external consultant coming in. What's been your biggest learning opportunity in those organizations? What have you learned that's impacted you the most in a company?
I think getting to appreciate the specific contexts of the organizations that I'm working with and avoiding being fanatical about a solution and realizing that the only way to be effective, especially as an external consultant working with executives, is that you have to find when they're ready to hear the things that they need to hear and when not to say the things they're not ready to hear, so that you can live to fight another day. The primary, I've been running a community event in Seattle for close to 7 years called Seattle Lean Coffee, and we have people from at its peak we'd get people from Boeing and Seattle Children's Hospital and Virginia Mason and the University of Washington, and never anybody from Amazon 1 block away from the coffee shop where we do it, and some people from Microsoft and various software companies. And we all have a lot of the same problems, but a number of Agile coaches come in, and I have watched so many Agile coaches burn out in a blaze of glory from client engagements that went incredibly short periods of time. And they would be at Lean Coffee screaming and breaking the clouds about how it's unjust and people just don't do the right things and all of these clients are horrible. And oh, I just scored another gig and I'm going in to do an Agile transformation at this place and they really need my help. And then they don't come to Lean Coffee for a month and then they're back and, well, they just didn't want to do what it took and they didn't have the courage and they weren't willing to make those hard decisions because they're bad. And you know, it's a weekly clinic in both how to and how not to help an organization. I'm super big into Jerry Weinberg, who defines consulting as giving advice at someone's request. And that at someone's request is a really big deal. You've got to be willing to bite through your tongue all the way, over and over and over again. If you want, that's how you earn the wins, is by not getting spit out before somebody trusts you enough to let you change something that matters to them.
Thank you. Ardita, you've got a similar sort of engagement that you've been through your company Tango and in prior engagements, companies that you've been working for and working with. Maybe you could tell us as well what you've learned along the way that's been the biggest impact to you.
I've had the opportunity to work sometimes as a contractor and sometimes as a full-time employee. So I've seen the approach on both sides. It is funny because when I have worked as a contractor, I have learned a lot to rely on the domain knowledge of the people that are there and to get to work with them to understand what actually is going on before I give an advice. And it is funny because sometimes people that are at those companies, they work there, they know the right thing to do, they are just not being heard. And they use me as an external contractor to say, hey, can you say this because they hear what you say, they don't hear what I say? And actually, I tried just to prove that theory, and it worked. So it was a surprise that organizations are not listening to people that they have internally, and they are paying to get someone that comes externally, looks at the organization, understands the problems, and agree with the suggestions that internal people give. But all of a sudden, someone hears that. When I was as an internal coach, there has been a different interesting conversation going on, because the expectations that leadership has on a coach sometimes is not understood well. And everyone in the leadership team had a different expectations from what the coach does. And that, I believe, comes from the fact that a lot of leadership people are actually not, have not had professional coaching before, and they haven't had any sense of coaching or mentoring before. So they just got into that position because they were good at what they were doing, and all of a sudden, okay, you're a manager. And nobody helped them into understanding, well, what do you need to do as a leader? So when coaches go, they don't know what to do with us because they're not used to have that sense of coaching in a professional environment.
All right, that means you must be up next by process of elimination. In your biography, in your profile, you've got a note in there that one of the things that you enjoy is improving experiences in process in engineering organizations. I'd love it if you could give us an example of a time that you did that and how that worked out for you, or didn't work out. You're allowed to pick either example. And you get 2 microphones.
Okay. So this was actually my first consulting job. I had a 6-month contract working as a quality engineer, but the department wasn't very cohesive, and the organization had a number of issues. So the way that it turned out, I'm trying to decide how to phrase this exactly, how to shape this narrative. There were regular quality engineers, and then there was me. I was embedded on a team of regular engineers, and they had some serious process issues there. Specifically, they had a test suite that took 6 hours to run. The company tried to release their software once a week, and every time their test suite would take 6 hours to run. And that made it impossible for the developers to get feedback from the test suites in the way that they would need to do to, really make this agile process work. So there were a few things that I did that really facilitated a change there. First of all, the way that the suites were structured is that they had an end-to-end QA suite, and then they had, at the level of each individual microservice, each service had its own test suite that covered that service only. So what I ended up doing was arranging to have the individual test suites for the microservices beefed up significantly and also made more efficient, so that those tests provided more comprehensive coverage and necessitated less end-to-end testing. So by the time that I left, the test suite runtime was down to 2 hours. And that still seems like a long time, but it was a night and day difference for that organization's process. And it was just an example of how focusing on where to concentrate effort really can make a huge difference. Does that answer the question?
I was actually going to save this question for a little bit later, but I think I'm going to piggyback right on that one. And David, it's for you because you've spent a lot of time with automation, building automated testing. And one of the things that I've heard, and I don't know if that's a common thing, but one of the things I've heard in organizations is that's nice that you want to build this automation and that you want to automate these systems, but we're too busy. We don't have time for that. We have to get that next feature out, and which, by the way, leads into product management, which we'll get to in a second. But maybe you can tell me, how do you make the time to automate or to build some automation into your workflow?
That's a great question. The first two thoughts that come to mind, one is a slide that Adam often shows in his presentation, the "we're too busy to improve" slide, and you may have seen it with the Lego figures pushing a cart with the square wheels, right? And the second thing that comes to mind is a presentation that Amir Barilko gave at a conference here in Winnipeg a while ago, and someone asked him a similar question and said, when is the best time to refactor? And he gave a great answer, which included, when your manager is on vacation is a great time to refactor. And the assumption there being that when you're not being watched is a good time to do something like that. Where do you get the time for automation? I find that when a development team is separating the work of writing production code from writing the work of test automation code, that's generally a recipe for failure in my experience, because it allows people who don't fully understand the effort required to write stable software or the effort required to write good automation, or truly understand the impact of allowing technical debt to build up and go unanswered, to make decisions and say, well, I'm paying for that, and I can see the value in this code that's production code, but I'm not paying for that, the test code, so, right? So often what I coach and what I try to coach technical people and developers in particular is don't ask for permission to invest in test automation. Instead, look to develop a practice of learning how to use unit testing and automated testing frameworks so that you can add automated testing into your development and delivery practice, so it's no longer a separate thing that you have to ask for permission for. And it's possible to get to a place with enough practice where it just becomes part of how you work, and you get to, you write code through automation, or you use automated techniques and automated testing techniques to help drive the code that you're writing. And then it's no longer a separate thing that you have to ask for permission for. It's just part of the quality with which, the toolbox of tools that you use to deliver quality work.
Thanks, David. Does anyone else have any questions, or should I keep going? Okay, I'm going to we have one from the back there. Was that the kind of automation? Sorry, say that again? So the question is there only, sorry? Okay, so the question, if David, if you want to continue, or if anyone else wants to pick this up, was I specifically asking about test automation, or are there other things that that can be automated that I was referring to in the question? And I'll tell you, from my perspective, I was actually specifically asking about test automation, but that, no, is not the only type of automation.
Infrastructure automation is what came to
Just
infrastructure automation was what came to my mind. Same basic idea. People are so busy configuring servers manually that they can't manage to find the time to set up, Puppet scripts and things like that and deploy like we do in the 21st century. So.
I think also there's from a product perspective, there's a temptation to automate every type of function that your product may do. So I think about this a lot with like administration panels and things that kind of that happen on the back end, or a lot of like self-service type of tools. I would categorize somewhere in there, and I really tend to look at it as when you have these manual processes that you're tempted to go spend a lot of time and a lot of money putting some automation around as a part of your roadmap. Start to calculate out how much time you're actually spending on the manual portion of it, and don't try to automate it until you're actually spending more time than it's worth. Little things like, I used to have to maintain a phone number list, for airlines in one of my old products. I would have to go look at it. It would take me 2 hours once a quarter to go run through some websites and check these numbers, and people wanted to build out, we can go and screen scrape all these different airline websites and have these things and it will automatically come in. And it's like, well, but if I'm wrong on the phone number, it's not that big of a deal, and it only takes me a couple hours once a quarter to go do. So once we get to the point where I start spending way more time on it then I'll go invest 4 months of time to automate this manual task.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah.
I like Dave's answer as saying it's just part of the tool set. And what it makes me think of is years ago, we didn't use source control. Nobody today is saying, where do you find the time to start using source control? We just do it, right? Like, so for automating your testing, for your continuous integration, for your builds and your deployments, that should be, if you think you're writing code that's going to make it to production, you should do those things.
But that takes too long.
So just in case anyone didn't hear, the comment was years ago, not that many actually, we didn't use things like source control, and now that's just how we do our job. And automation, test automation should be the same. To which Adam's reply was, yeah, but that takes too long. And okay, did you just want to grab a microphone? Thanks.
The other guy's faster because he doesn't waste his time on all that automation stuff, and it's still in production. I guess it works enough. We're making money, so why? Why waste time? We need to make the code.
So let me jump in, actually, Chris, with you. You've been doing a lot of work in systems thinking, looking beyond just the writing of the code, going beyond just writing the tests, to actually look at the entire interactions of the system. And to Adam's point, you know, that writing those tests just take too long. Nobody's willing to pay for them. How does that relate into what you've been looking at with systems thinking, as opposed to looking at the testing, the writing of the code, version control, all of those types of things? How would you take a systems approach to how we write software, though?
Well, it's looking at what business are you in? Who are your customers? Understanding, so I just did a talk right before this one, understanding the purpose and your relationship with your customer. Why do we build what we build? To what standard of quality are our customers depending on us? Right now we're in a very interesting era where we're seeing data breaches and security breaches occurring on regular, frequent bases. Equifax being probably one of the largest right now. But if you look back, it happens just about every year. We probably have maybe a half dozen that we know of, many smaller ones we don't. And it's a consequence of the system that birthed that structure that in consequence makes bad products. People are not bad. I think everybody in this room tries to do a level best job. But the job that you're actually able to do and being able to build in quality things that you like I want to develop in a professional manner. I want to make sure I have testing. I want to make sure that I've got good version control and history. These shouldn't be seen as things that you need to beg, borrow, and steal to do, or that you feel that you need to conceal. I used to, when I would coach, I would say, well, if you can't get the permission, or it's an environment where this will be seen as a negative consequence, do it by stealth. We used to talk about do Agile by stealth. You just change the way that you work, but that strikes me as a very poor way to improve an organization. That's looking at it as pieces and parts and not the whole. So when I work with leadership teams now, they have these concerns most directly. They're like, well, we don't have time for this. We've got a regulatory deadline that's approaching in December. We don't have time for the teams to learn these new skills. We just need to ship something. So I asked them a critical question. I said, if you were to assign yourself a letter grade about what you need to achieve for your customer, what would it be? Are you doing an A job, B job, C job, D job? Are you just meeting the specifications? And that's what they'll say. Yeah, it's meet. And I've had some of them be honest enough to say, well, that's a D. That's a 50%. The question that's never really followed up, they're like, well, that's all we need to do. And I'm like, well, but how well are you meeting the specification? Meeting spec is not the point anymore. So when I work at a systems perspective, it's helping the leadership begin to see, here's the bigger picture. Here's how all of these pieces and parts relate to you getting a product to your customer. Have you thought about the consequence of this? That there are decisions that are being made, that are being telegraphed to your teams that are influencing how well they can meet the specification, meet the customer.
I'd like to and that. Yes, and no, shut up. No, yes, and actually, when I talk about process cycle efficiency and I talk about typing in a sort of cheeky, pejorative, like denigrating developers kind of way, part of my goal is actually to liberate developers to do a quality job by taking some of the focus off of them. You know, if we look at the whole system, the majority, really greater than 80 to 90% of the delays of the lead time that we have is in dependencies, is in waiting for something else, and it isn't waiting on an available programmer. And when we have these poor decisions like not automating, not building continuous delivery pipelines, not doing good code craftsmanship, it's all in the name of hyper optimizing the productivity of the individual developer. And I wish if organizations took a more systemic view, they would realize that not only are they weakening the quality of their code base and the quality of the actual code that's being produced by their company, they're doing so for no good reason. They're preventing people from engaging in really high quality craftsmanship for no reason, because it's not actually speeding the end-to-end delivery of value to their customers. I would rather executives took their focus and looked at the strategy of their organization and what their customers want and what the market is going to do, and left their development team alone, or even better, actively encouraged and supported their professional development so that they could do craftsmanship and build continuous delivery pipelines and automate things, because ultimately it's 5% of your total lead time. It makes no sense to vulture over every single developer and make sure that they're doing as much typing as possible, because it doesn't make you better off, it makes you worse off, because you're encouraging them to cut corners and do worse job at actually building the product for no actual gain to your customer. So that's why I talk about process cycle efficiency, is in hopes that somebody will hear me, pay attention to their organization, and allow the developers to do the good job that they so desperately want to do.
One thing that the leadership, it's kind of interesting, they have some of the same concerns around cohesion amongst themselves. And one of the ways that I help them get out of this is it's a bit of a mental trap for them. Leadership to them literally becomes every day coming in and feeling like they have to put out fires. And it's a very unfulfilling and unrewarding way to go about your life. And certainly for yourselves, if you're ever looking at ascending and becoming more effective in your organization, I would say that don't look at management as it's been practiced. It's probably one of the worst ways to look at it. We laugh, it's Dilbert-esque, but it's actually something that we can change and evolve. And the leadership who are in these battles right now, they want to get away from it too. So it's helping them see greater opportunity, that there is a different way that you can lead the organization from a systems perspective that makes some of these things that we want to do to make great products and experiences for our customers possible.
I was going to add that one thing I've seen get in the way of implementing really good processes or staying on top of current technologies is that managers don't have a lot of awareness about how their subordinates communicate with them. I've seen a lot of cases where people will approach managers saying things like, "We really should be doing this, best practices that, blah 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 innovation, blah 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 industry standard." And what management hears is, look, we have an operation to run here. We have to write the paychecks. We have to sell the product, and what they're not hearing is that people are treading lightly with them. What they're not hearing is, help, we're going to go out of business if we don't implement CI right now, or that kind of thing. And I've literally gone up to a CTO and to her face said, if you don't make technical priorities a business priority, you will go out of business. And she listened. But managers don't know that that's what people mean when they say those things. So I think both like as a manager, having an awareness that people don't want to say something that might piss you off, and also when speaking to managers, recognizing that they aren't getting the information they need because people aren't willing to approach them that way.
Thanks, guys. Anything else that anyone has right now? All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. Emily, I'd love to get a perspective from you on how you balance the technical demands of writing acceptance tests, version control, doing all of the things we need to do to deliver a great product, And sometimes when we write software, we're delivering something, we uncover things that we didn't anticipate up front. And I'd love to get your perspective on how we manage stakeholder expectations through that through that process, through that discovery that goes on while we're building a product.
Yeah, so as a product manager, I feel like a big part of my job is being a shield for the rest of my team. Especially when it comes to technical priorities and things that have to happen and challenges and delays. There's a really popular thing in the product management industry, the Venn diagram that has business, UX, and tech, and product kind of sits right in between. And when I look at what that really means, it means when I am talking to the business people, I am the advocate for the UX and the technology teams, and kind of flipping it around as you go around the circle. But what that means is when it comes time to do the maintenance, do the the kind of upgrades to the technical platform, handle things that just get uncovered that people don't know, we didn't realize going in, I have to be the advocate for the tech team and help other people understand why it's important. I was doing a talk recently where I kind of put side by side, in the technology team you look at, you've got like feature work and you've got,
Sorry, I was muted the whole time.
Could you start over?
TLDR, product manager, shield for everyone else. Venn diagram, we like to play in all three areas. So sorry for the video for later. But where was I? Yes. So, the technology teams look at kind of the work, and you've got feature work, and then you've got, maintenance and technical things we have to do on the back end. And if you show that same thing to someone in the finance department or in marketing, they see stuff I can sell and stuff I can't sell. And they want me to shrink that stuff I can't sell as small as possible. But what they don't understand is if I completely ignore that, I'm not going to have anything to sell because my product's going to become defunct. My developers are going to be unhappy working in old technologies, so they're going to quit, and I'm going to get the crappy developers who don't want to work on this technology or who are willing to work on this technology, and then my product's going to fall behind. And so for me, it really all kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier of when you bring product management in as a part of the product team, not necessarily reporting wise, but how they're viewed and how they work with the development team. And as product managers in the room, you need to understand the technology and you need to understand the why, because I need to be able to go explain to the people outside of my team why we need to do this or why this thing took longer than we expected. And it's not a bad thing. It just is. Things are going to take as long as they're going to take. Actually, I have that same, it's a different version, the same square wheel slide and the wheel, and we don't have time to fix this, talking about this same topic. Because if we don't take the time to do those things, and we don't take time as product managers and people on the business side to allow for those things, it's going to hurt us in the long run. And so just make time for it. The other side effect of that, and if you're an engineer, just don't listen because it's a part of the trade secrets of product. It will make your engineers like you, and then they want to help you, and then you work better and you get more stuff done. So it has very real impacts on the product, but it's also your relationship, and it shows the development team that, like, hey, we're in this together. If you, it starts to like cut out some of those games that you typically end up playing. We're like, well, we're going to give you an estimate that's 20% over what it actually is because we don't want you to come down hard on us when we uncover those unexpected things. You'll be able to have real conversations with your team. They'll give you real estimates, unless you're doing the no estimates thing. I've never attempted that, but you'll actually get kind of better conversations up front because they know if we encounter something unexpected, my product manager's not going to come down on me. They're not going to yell at me. They're not going to ask me to work overtime and make it happen. And then you have a better trusting relationship to build better products, which is what we're all here for.
Ardita, you've been working more and more with business, the business side of the business. That sounds weird, right? Like it's not just me. Okay. You've been working with more and more on the business side of the business. What insights have you gained in helping them with their product development and delivering value to your customers?
It's interesting because I go there as an Agile coach to help the business side of the business to become Agile. So we keep talking about the business agility. I don't know if you have, if you are up to date with all the conversations going on around business agility. It is about that sense of having an organization that acts in an agile way from the customer point of view. So we're not just executing, and we're not just getting that the development team working in an agile way. As an organization, we think with a shorter feedback loops and with a faster decision making and with a purposeful from the beginning and delivering value and all of that. So unfortunately, a lot of organizations start thinking like that when they start bringing the agile transformation in the IT. For some reason, we believe that if we improve IT, everything else is going to be better. And then business is caught off guard. And business says, well, now I need my coach to tell me what to do because IT is doing their thing and they are ahead of time, ahead of me. So I hope we get into a place where organizations don't look themselves as IT, business, operation. We want to be into this together. And we want to start thinking with a customer point of view and with proper KPIs from the beginning so everyone understands why are we doing what we're doing. And business does have usually some traditional ways of working. They do have sometimes long processes, and depending on some organizations, the layer of management is thicker than in some others. So those are some of the areas that we usually want to see being more lean and more, you want to see the workflow faster in those areas so that it gets into the development teams more concrete, more focused in a smaller portion so they can deliver it faster. So we want to start with a small and with value from the beginning. And business needs to, business is struggling in some organization, but business is also doing well in some of them. It's not that business doesn't understand, right? They're just, has worked for them until now. And why should we change? Until they see some improvement, until they see a team doing something differently that seems to be even better than we are. And now we want, okay, we want more of that. So I don't know if that
But I
helps.
like to ask people a lot of times when they say that it's been working for them, like, you know, the Dr. Phil moment, like, has it been working for you? You know, when we start talking about deadlines and, you know, fixed time, fixed scope type projects and planning, and they'll say, well, we've always been able to get dates on our projects before. And my response is, and how has that worked? Like, when was the last time you had a project that actually finished with the scope you expected at the time you expected? It's either it goes over time and it goes over budget, or the teams are having to chop scope in half to fit this false deadline based off of some, you know, random pulling a date out of thin air. So it hasn't been working, but it's like a security blanket that people can't let go of.
You're right. There are a lot of organizations that have struggled. At the same time, there are organizations that have been in business for hundreds of years. Banks. There are very old banks that have been in business for years. And they can tell the story that, hey, I've been here longer than you have been talking about this agile thing. So who are you to tell me what to do? That being said, it doesn't mean that they are not open to improve, right? So this is where we now come into context, understanding where they come from, understanding their beliefs, understanding their successes, and improve them, improve their strengths, and reduce the weaknesses.
I feel like we could probably spend about another 3 days just on this topic alone, but we are coming close to time. So I'd love it if we could wrap up and we can maybe just go down the line here, or if you know, you guys can decide where to start. But it's been 2 fantastic days of a ton of information here in all of the sessions. Given that we are the last session of the last day, everyone will probably forget everything that all of the other sessions covered. So if you guys could perhaps offer the one nugget of advice or direction or the one thing that you would like everybody to take with them when they leave, what would that be? Yeah, we can start with Chris. No pressure.
Thank you, Adam. I think probably the two sessions that I did were the Red Bead experiment and what is the purpose of your system. For the folks who participated in that, it's to realize the consequence of systems and the influence they have on how people behave. They behave in accordance to the system they are contained within. And if you're looking at why leaders, managers, yourselves, why you may struggle to achieve certain things, it's always drawing upon the wisdom of folks like Deming and Schultes. 97% of your organization's problems are attributable to their processes and methodologies and interrelationships. 3% are actually people. So focus on that. Start helping your leadership and your teams think bigger, think in systems rather than, Joe is a bad guy or Adam is, very depressing.
I'll keep mine short and sweet. I hope that in the hopefully near future, we all recognize how stupid the business side of the business sounds as a concept.
And now to me as the business. If you were in my session earlier, one thing that I really am trying to focus on is challenging the status quo, especially in large enterprises where people have done things the same way a really long time. And one way that I have found to do that is to fight what I've been calling the mysterious they. So when you hear someone say, well, they won't let us do that, or you can't do that because they're going to come down hard on us, start asking for the name of they. And if it start at the top, is it the CTO? No. Okay. Is it the person that works for them? No. And pretty soon you'll walk down the org chart till you find out that there is no they. And either someone just doesn't want to do something or people are making assumptions about what people won't let them do. And when you start to call that out, people will start to allow themselves some space to challenge that status quo. And if you're using the mysterious they, stop it. It's just a way to shut down conversation. Have the conversations that you need to have rather than trying to deflect.
We're going to go out of order here just for a second, if that's okay, David.
Oh, no, I just wanted to.
Sorry, I thought you wanted to go next. Okay. In that case, we're going.
Thank you, Adam. So the one that I'm going to mention is it's actually a point that Adam mentioned in his brief introduction to Agile, Scrum, and Kanban earlier. He put up the slide of the Agile Manifesto, which I think a lot of developers have seen by now, and emphasized the phrase at the bottom that says, though there is value, though we see value in the items on the left, we also see value in the items on the right, just more so, and that, I'm not quoting it properly. No, I'm not. I know I'm not. But close enough, you get the idea. And the reason that that's important to me is because it speaks to the fact that it's really dogma in any form about any of these processes or tools or technologies that we talk about that gets in the way of people communicating and having those conversations that are so important to understanding each other and understanding what we're all trying to achieve and to breaking down the barriers between us and them, between developers and testers, between development and the business around all sides, and opening the ground to have those conversations that we need to have if we're going to understand what we're all trying to do and who we're trying to do it for and how to do a better job.
Yeah, I think mine would be similar, that we're dealing with situations where we have to interact with a wide variety of different people with different backgrounds and recognize that all of us, including our customers, are all working towards the same thing. And kind of stepping outside yourself to reach out to other people and communicate with them on their level to try and make things work.
I don't know if we've spoken enough, but probably just to put a little bit more focus, Peter Drucker is one of the bright minds that we have around that have been in the world of business around us. And one of the things he said is the purpose of a business is to make and keep customers. So I think we need to really look at our organizations from that point of view. Are we making and keeping our customers? And start from that point of view into what do we need to do on operation, on business, on finance, on HR, on technology, on everything, not just on one area. Don't optimize only the delivery part. Optimize your whole organization. Optimize your whole value delivery chain that you have in order to keep making and keeping these customers so you are valuable. So business agility.
Cool. Guys, I'd like to just, if we could say thank you to Chris, Adam, Emily, David, Dana, Ardita. Thank you guys so much for participating in this. I hope this was valuable. I hope you guys got something. You've got a few minutes left. I think we've got about 2 minutes before they close the doors and kick us out. So if you have 2 minutes of questions, I'm going to offer up everyone here to grab that. 6 minutes. I'm told we have 6 minutes. If you want to grab anyone here, you've got 6 minutes to chat with anybody here about any individual questions you do have. But on behalf of everyone on the panel, on behalf of everyone, I want to say thank you to the sponsors. Thank you to Darcy, Ryan, and Steve for putting the event on. And most of all, thank you for you guys for coming out. We really hope, I'm speaking on your behalf right now, really hope you got some value out of these last 2 days, but mostly the last hour. Thank you guys so much.